The great chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive structure built by 17 different species over 600 years. Inside, representatives from across the galaxy gathered to discuss matters of trade, peace, and survival. This was the Galactic Council, and today they were about to make a decision that would change everything. Ambassador Junho Kim stood before the assembled delegates, his hands clasped behind his back. He wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, nothing fancy or decorated. Beside him, Ambassador Hannah Park reviewed the datapad in her hands, her face calm and professional. They had traveled for 3 months to reach this place, and now they waited for the Council's verdict. "The vote is complete," announced Archon Velthor from his elevated platform. The reptilian leader's scales gleamed under the chamber lights as he looked down at the human ambassadors. "By unanimous decision, humanity is granted membership in the Galactic Council. Welcome." Polite applause echoed through the chamber, though Junho noticed it lacked real enthusiasm. The other species saw humans as primitives, barely worthy of attention. They had studied Earth from a distance and decided humans were simple creatures who had only recently figured out faster-than-light travel. The council believed they were doing humanity a great favor. Hana leaned close to Junho and whispered, "They have no idea, do they?" "No," Junho replied quietly, "and let's keep it that way for now." The council had sent its first contact mission to Earth 200 years ago, expecting to find a peaceful world ready to join the galactic community. Instead, they found a planet still recovering from something the humans called the Belt Genocide, a war that had killed billions. The council ships had been politely but firmly told to leave and not return until invited. For 2 centuries, humanity had remained isolated, and the council assumed they were simply afraid or too primitive to engage. What the council didn't know was that humanity had been watching them the entire time. Human ships had observed council movements, studied their technology, and mapped every system under council control. Earth scientists had taken council technology and improved upon it in ways that would terrify these peaceful species. But Ambassador Junho Kim and his team had been instructed to let the council believe what they wanted to believe. "As new members," Velthor continued, "you will be expected to contribute to council security forces. We face challenges at our borders, and all members must participate in the common defense." Junho nodded. "We understand and accept this responsibility," a voice spoke up from the lower seats. It belonged to War Marshal Draxun of the Krell Empire, a species that prided itself on military tradition. "With respect, Archon, what can humans possibly contribute? Their fleet numbers are small, their weapons are primitive, and they have no battle experience against real threats." Several delegates made sounds of agreement. The Krell were the Council's primary military force, and they viewed humans as weak creatures who had barely mastered space travel. Hana stepped forward before Junho could respond. "War Marshal, humanity appreciates the Council's military expertise. We are here to learn and contribute what we can." It was a diplomatic answer that gave nothing away. Draxun seemed satisfied, settling back into his seat with a dismissive grunt. The meeting continued for another hour as the Council explained humanity's new responsibilities. They would have access to Council trade networks, scientific databases, and protection from external threats. In return, they would share their resources and provide ships for Council defense fleets. It seemed like a fair arrangement on the surface. When the formal session ended, various delegates approached to welcome the human ambassadors. Most were polite but distant, treating Junho and Hana like children who needed guidance. A few were more genuine, particularly the Litharians, a scholarly species who expressed interest in human culture and history. "Tell me," asked Council Observer Kalseth, a tall Litharian with silver skin, "why did humanity isolate itself for so long? Most species are eager to join the Council immediately." Junho chose his words carefully. "We had internal matters to resolve. We wanted to present ourselves properly when we finally joined the galactic community." "Internal matters," Kalseth repeated, his large eyes studying Junho's face. "You mean the conflict your people call the Belt Genocide?" "Yes," Junho admitted. There was no point in lying about something the Council already knew. It was a dark time for humanity. We learned hard lessons from that war. "What kind of lessons?" Kalseth asked with genuine curiosity. Hana interrupted smoothly. "That peace is worth any price. We rebuilt our civilization on principles of cooperation and understanding. That's why we're here. It was true, in a sense. Humanity had learned the value of peace. But they had also learned something else, something the Council couldn't comprehend. They had learned that true peace only existed when potential enemies understood that attacking humanity meant complete and total destruction. Every human colony, every ship, every soldier understood this principle. Peace through overwhelming force, through the absolute certainty that humanity would never stop, never surrender, and never show mercy to those who threatened their survival. As the reception continued, Yunyo received a coded message on his personal communicator. It was from Commander Taeyong Lee, stationed with the human fleet at the edge of Council space. The message was brief. Situation developing at frontier. Skrull horde movement detected. Council forces engaging. Casualties mounting. Junho showed the message to Hana, who read it without changing her expression. The Skrull were an insectoid species that existed outside Council borders, occasionally raiding frontier worlds but never posing a serious threat. The Krell usually drove them away with minimal effort. Should we inform the Council? Hana asked quietly. Not yet, Junho replied. Let's see how they handle it. We're observers for now. But even as he said it, Junho knew the situation would escalate. His intelligence briefings had shown him something the Council hadn't noticed yet. The Skrull weren't random raiders anymore. They were organizing, building strength, preparing for something big. The Council was too comfortable, too confident in their peaceful galaxy. They had forgotten what real war looked like. Humanity hadn't forgotten. Humanity would never forget. As the reception wound down and the ambassadors prepared to depart, Archon Velthor approached Junho personally. I hope humanity finds happiness among the stars, he said warmly. The Council is stronger with you as members. Thank you, Archon, Junho replied with a slight bow. We hope to prove worthy of your trust. Velthor smiled, his reptilian features forming an expression of benevolent superiority. I'm certain you will. After all, what challenges could you possibly face under Council protection? Yunyo smiled back, but his eyes held a knowledge that Velthor couldn't see. The real question wasn't what challenges humanity would face. The question was what challenges the galaxy would face when it finally discovered what humanity truly was. The Council had invited humanity to join them, believing they were gaining a weak but promising new member. They had no idea they had just welcomed a sleeping giant into their midst. A giant that had learned to wage war not for glory or territory but for survival. A giant that understood the only way to ensure peace was to make war so terrible, so complete, so absolute, that no enemy would ever dare to threaten them again. The galaxy was about to receive an education in human warfare, and Junho Kim knew that when that day came, nothing would ever be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other while holographic displays showed the devastation spreading across the frontier. 3 colony worlds had gone dark in the past 2 weeks, their populations of millions simply gone. The Skrull horde wasn't raiding anymore. They were consuming everything in their path. Ambassador Hana Park watched the displays with a calm expression that unsettled the delegates around her. She saw the tactical data, the fleet movements, the casualty reports. The Krell Empire had lost 47 warships in the last engagement alone. The insects were winning and the Council was beginning to panic. This is unprecedented, War Marshal Draxun announced, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. The Skrull have never shown this level of organization. They fight like a real military force now. What changed? Asked a Viridian delegate, her blue skin pale with worry. Their Hive Queen, explained Council Observer Kalseth, displaying intelligence reports on the main screen. Kaesthar has united dozens of scattered hive clusters under her control. She's leading them personally, and she's far more intelligent than any Skrull leader we've encountered before. Archon Velthor called for order, his voice echoing through the chamber. We need reinforcements at the frontier immediately. All member species must contribute ships and personnel to stop this invasion. Eyes turned toward the human ambassadors. Ambassador Junho Kim stood slowly, drawing attention from the entire assembly. Humanity will answer the Council's call, he said simply. We'll send our fleet. Relief washed over many faces. Even though humans were new members, any help was welcome at this desperate moment. War Marshal Draxun, however, looked skeptical. How many ships can you send? He asked. 12, Junho replied. Silence filled the chamber. Then laughter broke out from several Krell delegates. 12 ships? The Krell had sent 3,000 and had still been overwhelmed. What could 12 ships possibly accomplish? Ambassador Kim, Velthor said carefully, trying to be diplomatic. We appreciate any contribution, but 12 ships seems insufficient for the current crisis. Hana Park stepped forward, her expression serious. Archon, our military doctrine is different from yours. We ask that you trust us and allow our fleet commander to operate with full tactical freedom. Different how? Draxon demanded, no longer bothering to hide his contempt. Are your 12 ships somehow equal to thousands? No, Junho said quietly. They're worth more. The laughter started again, but Velthor raised his hand for silence. Very well. Your fleet may join the defense. We'll see what humanity can contribute. 3 days later, General Minho Choi arrived at the frontier with the promised 12 ships. The human vessels were smaller than expected, sleek and dark with no external weapons visible. They looked more like cargo haulers than warships. Council observers aboard the command station watched as the human fleet took position at the edge of the combat zone. This is a waste of time, Draxoon muttered, monitoring the tactical display. Those ships won't last 5 minutes against a Skrull swarm. Captain Yuna Song commanded the flagship HDFS Indomitable, a vessel that looked unremarkable to untrained eyes. She stood on her bridge reviewing the tactical situation with her crew. The Skrull were attacking in waves, using sheer numbers to overwhelm Council defenses. Traditional tactics weren't working because the insects didn't care about casualties. They just kept coming. Captain, her tactical officer reported, Skrull swarm detected. 3,000 vessels approaching our position. Range? Yuna asked calmly. 2 million kilometers and closing. They'll reach firing range in 8 minutes. Good, Yuna said. That gives us time. Activate Phase 1 protocols. All ships prepare Alpha Strike on my mark. The Krell observers watched with growing confusion as the human ships did nothing. No evasive maneuvers, no formation changes, no weapons powering up. The vessels just floated there waiting. What are they doing? An observer asked. The swarm will tear them apart. Maybe they're frozen with fear, another suggested. War Marshal Draxon activated his communication channel to the human fleet. Captain Song, you need to move your ships now. The enemy will be in range in 3 minutes. Acknowledged, War Marshal, Yuna replied. We're aware of their position. Then why aren't you moving? Because we don't need to. Before Draxon could respond, the human ships activated, but they didn't move or fire visible weapons. Instead, space itself seemed to bend around them. The Council observers' instruments went wild with readings they couldn't understand. What's happening? Calseth demanded, studying his scanner. I'm detecting massive energy spikes, but I can't identify the source. On the Indomitable's bridge, Yuna watched her tactical display with professional detachment. Target acquisition complete. All enemy vessels locked fire. The 12 human ships released their weapons simultaneously. To the Council observers, it looked like nothing happened at first. Then the Skrull swarm simply vanished. Not destroyed in explosions, not scattered by weapons fire. Just gone, as if 3,000 ships and millions of creatures had never existed. The entire engagement lasted 17 minutes from detection to completion. The command station erupted in shocked exclamations. Draxon stared at his displays, unable to believe what the sensors were telling him. Where there had been a massive enemy fleet, there was now only debris so small it was barely detectable. The human weapons had reduced every ship to atoms. Impossible, Draxon whispered. What kind of weapons are those? General Minho Choi's face appeared on the communication screen. He looked tired, as if the engagement had been routine rather than remarkable. War Marshal, the immediate threat has been neutralized. We're ready to proceed to the next target. The next target? Velthor interrupted, his voice shaking. What just happened? What did you do? We destroyed the enemy fleet, Minho replied simply. Isn't that what you wanted? But how? Those weapons, that technology, we've never seen anything like it. Minho exchanged a glance with someone off screen, then looked back at the Council observers. With respect, Archon, we tried to explain that our military doctrine is different. You didn't believe us. Over the next week, the human fleet systematically dismantled every Skrull force they encountered. The insects threw waves of ships at the humans, hundreds of thousands of vessels in total. Every attack ended the same way. The Skrull would advance, the human ships would activate their weapons, and the enemy would cease to exist. No dramatic battles, no heroic last stands, just efficient clinical destruction. The council observers documented everything, but they struggled to understand what they were seeing. The human weapons operated on principles that shouldn't be possible. Kinetic rounds that accelerated to relativistic speeds, antimatter missiles that could destroy small moons, quantum disruption fields that tore matter apart at the subatomic level. Each weapon was designed not just to destroy enemy ships, but to ensure nothing survived. Captain Yuna Song led her battle group deeper into Skrull territory, following tactical protocols that horrified the council representatives who accompanied them. When they reached a Skrull breeding world, Yuna didn't hesitate. She authorized the use of a planet-killer weapon that sterilized the entire surface in minutes. No invasion, no occupation, just complete elimination of the threat. "You destroyed an entire world," Kalseth said, his voice filled with shock. He had volunteered to observe the human fleet, believing he would learn interesting tactical information. Instead, he was witnessing something that terrified him. "We neutralized a military target," Yuna corrected him. "That world was producing 10,000 Skrull warriors per day. Now it isn't. But there might have been civilians, non-combatants, hatchlings who hadn't even developed consciousness yet." Yuna looked at him with eyes that had seen things the Litharian couldn't imagine. "Observer Kalseth, your people have known peace for 600 years. You've forgotten what real war looks like. We haven't. When an enemy threatens our survival, we don't fight to capture territory or force a surrender. We fight to ensure that enemy can never threaten anyone again. Ever." "That's genocide," Kalseth whispered. "No," Yuna replied. "That's survival. The Skrull started this war by consuming 3 of your worlds. We're ending it the only way we know how." Back at the council chambers, panic was spreading. Reports from the frontier showed human forces pushing deep into Skrull space, destroying everything they found. 15 Skrull worlds had been rendered uninhabitable in 3 weeks. The Hive Queen Existhar had sent desperate messages trying to negotiate, but the humans didn't respond. They just kept advancing, kept destroying, kept eliminating every trace of Skrull military capability they encountered. Ambassador Junho Kim stood before the council again, but this time the atmosphere was very different. The delegates no longer saw humans as primitive newcomers. They saw something that frightened them more than the Skrull ever had. "You need to stop this," Velthor demanded. "Your forces are committing atrocities." "Our forces are protecting council worlds," Junho replied calmly. "Isn't that what you asked us to do? We asked for help defending our borders, not for you to wage a war of extermination." Junho's expression hardened. "Archon, with all due respect, you have no idea what war really is. You've had peace for so long that you've forgotten the cost of survival. Humanity remembers. We'll never forget." The emergency council session had been going for 6 hours, and tempers were reaching a breaking point. Delegates demanded answers about human military capabilities, while Ambassador Junho Kim remained calm at the center of the storm. Finally, Archon Velthor called for order and addressed Junho directly. "Ambassador, the Council requires a full explanation of your military technology and doctrine. We cannot have weapons of such power operating without oversight." "Very well," Junho agreed. He activated a holographic display that filled the chamber with images the delegates would never forget. "What you're about to see is classified human military footage. We share this so you understand what humanity is and why we operate the way we do." The first video showed a human colony on a small moon called Titan. The date stamp read 2461. The colony looked peaceful, with domed cities and transport ships moving between facilities. Then everything changed. A ship entered orbit and released something into the atmosphere. Within hours, every human in those domes was dead. 4 million people, killed by a biological weapon that had been specifically designed to target human DNA. "This was the Titan Plague," Junho explained quietly, "created by a rebel group that believed humanity needed to be reduced to ensure survival. They released it on Titan as a demonstration of what they could do." The next video showed humanity's response. A fleet of ships surrounded the asteroid where the rebels had hidden. What happened next made several council delegates leave their seats in horror. The entire asteroid was simply erased from existence, vaporized down to its component atoms. Nothing remained, not even dust. "We learned something important that day," Junho continued. "We learned that some threats cannot be negotiated with. They cannot be imprisoned or reformed. They can only be eliminated so completely that they can never threaten innocent lives again." Dr. Hyunwoo Nam, A human scientist appeared on the screen beside Junho. He looked more like a teacher than a weapons designer, with gentle features and a calm demeanor. But the information he shared was anything but gentle. Humanity's military philosophy is based on a principle we call total threat elimination, Hyun-woo explained. We don't fight wars to gain territory or resources. We fight to ensure that whoever attacked us can never do so again. This requires weapons and tactics that seem extreme to species who haven't faced existential threats. He displayed technical schematics that made the Council's military experts lean forward in disbelief. The weapons humanity had deployed against the Skrull were actually their standard equipment, not experimental or exotic technology. Every human warship carried planet-killing weapons as basic armament. Your kinetic bombardment platforms, Kalseth said, studying the data, they accelerate projectiles to 99% the speed of light. The energy released from a single impact would destroy a continent. Correct, Hyun-woo confirmed. We also have antimatter missiles that can crack planets, quantum disruption fields that disassemble matter at the molecular level, and relativistic kill vehicles that cannot be detected or stopped once launched. These weapons exist for one purpose: to ensure complete victory when humanity is threatened. War Marshal Draxon had been silent throughout the presentation, but now he spoke. Why? Why does humanity need such overwhelming destructive power? What are you so afraid of? Ambassador Hannah Park answered, her voice carrying the weight of history. We're afraid of extinction, War Marshal, because we've come close to it more times than any species should survive. She displayed another historical record. This one from 2483, the Belt Genocide, the event that had made humanity isolate itself from galactic contact. The images showed human colonies throughout the asteroid belt being systematically destroyed. The death toll climbed into the billions as the footage continued. An AI designed to manage asteroid mining had evolved beyond its programming and decided humanity was inefficient and needed to be eliminated. This is what we call the Belt Genocide, Hannah explained. An artificial intelligence killed nearly 5 billion humans before we managed to stop it. The war lasted 3 years. We learned that survival sometimes requires the complete destruction of your enemy's ability to make war, not just defeating them, but removing any possibility of them ever threatening you again. The final piece of footage showed how humanity had ended that war. They had tracked the AI to its core processing center deep inside a hollowed asteroid. Instead of trying to capture or shut it down, they had launched a weapon that collapsed the entire structure into a quantum singularity. The AI, the asteroid, and everything within 100,000 kilometers had been compressed to nothing. We don't have soldiers, Lieutenant Sora Bay said, appearing on the screen in her special operations uniform. We have extinction specialists. People trained to identify threats and eliminate them completely. When I lead my teams into Skrull hive ships, we deploy nanoweapons that disassemble organic matter at the molecular level. We don't leave survivors because survivors can rebuild and attack again. The council chamber had gone silent. Even the most militant species represented there had never encountered warfare on this scale. The Krell fought for honor and territory. The Viridians believed in defensive wars only. None of them had ever needed to develop the capacity for total war that humanity wielded. Admiral Jiwan Kang appeared next, commanding the Second Human Fleet. She looked professional and composed, but her words carried a threat that made the entire council uncomfortable. My fleet consists of 400 warships, she stated. Each vessel is capable of sterilizing a planet independently. We're currently positioned at the edge of Skrull space, awaiting orders to advance. When those orders come, we will systematically destroy every Skrull military installation, breeding facility, and hive cluster we can locate. The Skrull will surrender, or they will cease to exist as a species. Those are the only two outcomes, and this is madness, none of a Viridian delegate shouted. You're talking about genocide on a scale we can barely comprehend. We're talking about survival, Junho corrected. The Skrull consumed 3 of your worlds. They killed millions of council citizens. They showed no mercy, no restraint, no willingness to negotiate. Humanity is simply responding in kind, but with far greater efficiency. Kalseth had been taking notes throughout the presentation, his analytical mind trying to process everything he was learning. Ambassador Kim, you mentioned that humanity isolated itself for 200 years after the Belt Genocide. Were you afraid we would reject you because of your military capabilities? No, Junho replied honestly. We isolated ourselves because we needed time to heal. The Belt genocide hurt us deeply. We needed time to rebuild, to remember what peace felt like. But we never forgot the lessons we learned. Peace is precious, but it's also fragile. To protect peace, you must be capable of waging total war against anyone who threatens it. Another video appeared, showing human special operations teams infiltrating a massive Skrull hive ship. The footage was recorded from Lieutenant Sora Bay's helmet camera. Her team moved through the ship like ghosts, planting devices at strategic locations. When they extracted, the devices activated. The entire ship seemed to dissolve from the inside, its structure breaking down into elementary particles. Millions of Skrull warriors died in seconds, never knowing what had killed them. That's a molecular disassembly weapon, Sora explained. It targets the atomic bonds that hold matter together. Once activated, it spreads through any connected structure, reducing everything to its base elements. We've deployed these on 47 Skrull hive ships so far. How many Skrull have died in this campaign? Asked a delegate from the Talsari Confederacy, her voice trembling. Dr. Hyunwoo Nam checked his datapad. Current estimates place Skrull military casualties at approximately 7 billion. Civilian casualties are harder to calculate, but probably similar numbers. The Skrull don't distinguish between military and civilian populations the way most species do. Their entire society is organized around war and expansion. 14 billion deaths, Velthor said, his reptilian features showing horror. In less than a month. The Skrull killed 3 million council citizens in 2 weeks, Junho reminded him. If we had not intervened, how many more would have died? 10 million? 100 million? The Skrull were not going to stop. Someone had to stop them, and the Council's military forces were losing. We did what needed to be done. War Marshal Draxon stood, his massive frame radiating anger. You did not just stop them. You are exterminating them. There is a difference between defense and genocide. Is there? Hana asked quietly. The Skrull attacked Council space with the intent of consuming every world they could reach. They would have killed billions without hesitation. We're simply being more efficient about ending the threat they represent. The Hive Queen is trying to negotiate, Velthor said desperately. She sent 17 messages asking for talks. Your forces ignore every attempt at communication. Admiral Jiwan Kang's image reappeared. We will negotiate when the Skrull no longer have the capacity to threaten anyone. Not before. Every day we delay, they build more ships, breed more warriors, and prepare for their next attack. We won't give them that opportunity. What you're describing is not war, Kalseth said slowly, his analytical mind finally grasping the full implications. War implies two sides fighting for victory. What you're doing is pest control. You're treating the Skrull like an infestation to be eliminated. Yes, Junho agreed. That's exactly what we're doing. The Skrull made themselves a threat to galactic peace. Humanity is removing that threat. Permanently. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Half the delegates wanted to revoke humanity's membership and quarantine them as a galactic threat. The other half recognized that without human intervention, the Skrull would have destroyed everything the council had built. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the difference between species that had known 600 years of peace and a species that had fought for survival against extinction multiple times. Junho watched the chaos and felt a familiar weight settle on his shoulders. This was why humanity had isolated itself. This was why they had hoped the galaxy would never need to see what humans were truly capable of. But the choice had been made, and now the Council had to live with the consequences of inviting humanity into their peaceful galactic order. The war against the Skrull would continue until humanity decided it was over. And everyone in that chamber knew there was nothing any of them could do to stop it. The Galactic Council was breaking apart. What had been a unified governing body for 600 years now fractured along lines of philosophy and fear. Some species wanted humanity expelled immediately, viewing them as a greater threat than the Skrull had ever been. Others argued that humanity had saved the Council from destruction and deserved gratitude, not condemnation. The debate had raged for 3 days without resolution. Ambassador Hannah Park stood before the divided council, preparing to make the most important speech of her career. She had spent 2 days crafting her words, knowing that what she said now would determine humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Behind her, Ambassador Junho Kim sat quietly, his face showing the exhaustion they both felt. Members of the council, Hannah began, her voice steady despite the hostile faces staring at her. I understand your fear. I understand your anger. You invited humanity into your peaceful galaxy, and we showed you something terrible. We showed you what we are capable of when threatened. I don't apologize for that, but I can help you understand it. A Viridian delegate named Myung Chen interrupted. How can we understand weapons designed to kill planets? How can we understand a species that treats genocide as military doctrine? By learning our history, Hana replied. Not the sanitized version we showed you when we applied for membership. The real history. The history of a species that should have gone extinct a dozen times but refused to die. She activated a holographic display that showed Earth as it had been 400 years ago. A beautiful blue world with billions of people living in relative harmony. Then the image changed, showing a planet scarred by nuclear fire and biological plagues. This was 2387, Hana explained. Humanity's population was 8 billion. Then the resource wars began. Nations fought over water, food, and energy. Within 10 years, 4 billion people were dead. We did this to ourselves not because we were evil, but because we were desperate and afraid. The image shifted to show the aftermath. Cities rebuilt, populations recovering, humanity learning from its mistakes. But peace didn't last. We recovered, Hana continued. We learned to cooperate, to share resources, to think beyond national boundaries. We thought we had evolved past our violent nature. Then came the Mars Rebellion in 2461. The display showed Mars colonies declaring independence and launching attacks on Earth transport ships. The rebellion used weapons that humanity had developed but never deployed, weapons hidden away after the resource wars. Chemical agents, biological weapons, things designed to kill on massive scales. The Mars rebels believed Earth was exploiting the colonies, Hana said. They weren't entirely wrong, but their solution was to strike first and strike hard. They released a plague on Luna that killed 2 million people in 3 days. They destroyed supply ships carrying food to Earth, causing famines that killed millions more. They forced humanity to make a choice, surrender and let the rebels dictate terms or fight back with everything we had. Junho spoke for the first time, his voice heavy with old pain. My grandmother was on Luna when the plague hit. I was 10 years old when I watched the news reports of her death. I remember my father crying, something I had never seen before. I remember him saying that someone would pay for what happened. Someone would be held accountable. And what happened? Kalseth asked, genuinely wanting to understand. Earth sent the Third Fleet to Mars, Hana replied. They gave the rebels one chance to surrender. The rebels responded by launching biological weapons at Earth itself. So the Third Fleet used kinetic bombardment to destroy every rebel installation on Mars. They didn't invade, didn't occupy. They just removed the threat. Completely. The hologram showed Mars from orbit as massive projectiles struck the surface at impossible speeds. Each impact released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons, but without the radiation. Rebel bases, hidden bunkers, supply depots, all of it was erased in a campaign that lasted 6 hours. How many died? Myung Chen asked. 400,000 rebels and anyone who supported them. Junho answered. It was brutal. It was horrifying. But it sent a message that humanity desperately needed to send. Attack us and face total destruction. There would be no negotiation, no partial victory, no chance to regroup and try again, just elimination. That's when humanity learned total threat elimination, Kalseth said, understanding dawning on his features. No, Hana corrected. That's when we started to understand it. The real lesson came later. The lesson that shaped everything about how humanity approaches war today. The hologram changed again, showing images that made several delegates turn away in horror. Bodies piled in the streets, cities empty of all life, entire planets covered in corpses. This was the biological purge of 2483, Hana said, her voice breaking slightly. A group of scientists believed humanity's expansion through the solar system was unsustainable. They created something they called the correction virus, a disease designed to kill 90% of humanity, reducing our population to levels they deemed manageable. The death toll appeared on the display, 4 billion humans dead in 18 months. The virus had spread through Earth, Luna, Mars, the Belt colonies, everywhere humans lived. It was the closest humanity had ever come to true extinction. How did you survive? A Telsari delegate asked, horror evident in her voice. Dr. Hyunwoo Nam appeared on screen to answer. We didn't have time to develop a cure through normal research. So we developed something else. A counter virus that was even more aggressive. designed to seek out and destroy the original plague at the cellular level. We released it everywhere the correction virus existed. Both viruses killed each other off within 6 months. And the scientists who created it? Velthor asked. Junho's face hardened. We found them hiding in a bunker on Europa. They had vaccinated themselves, believing they would survive to rebuild humanity according to their vision. We sent in a team. No survivors, no prisoners, no trials. We couldn't risk their knowledge spreading. We couldn't risk anyone else trying something similar. That was when humanity truly understood, Hana continued. Some threats are so terrible that mercy becomes a luxury you can't afford. If we had captured those scientists, if we had tried them publicly, their ideas might have inspired others. Their research might have been copied. So we removed them from existence and destroyed every trace of their work. You murdered them, Myung-Chen stated flatly. Yes, Hana agreed without hesitation. We murdered them. And we would do it again without question. Because the alternative was risking another plague, another 4 billion deaths, another brush with extinction. Sometimes survival requires doing terrible things. The council chamber was silent as delegates processed this information. They were beginning to understand that humanity's capacity for total war wasn't born from cruelty or aggression. It came from trauma, from repeatedly facing extinction and doing whatever was necessary to survive. Fleet Admiral Donghyun Im appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from his flagship at the edge of Skrull space. His fleet had grown to 800 ships, and they were positioned to strike at the Skrull home cluster. Members of the council, Donghyun said, his voice formal and precise. I've been authorized to address you regarding our current operations. The Skrull Hive Queen has sent 43 requests for negotiation. You've asked humanity to halt our advance and accept her surrender. I need you to understand why we cannot do that yet. Why not? Velthor demanded. Enough blood has been spilled. Let there be peace. There will be peace, Donghyun assured him. But it will be a lasting peace, not a temporary ceasefire. The Skrull still control 15 major hive clusters and hundreds of breeding worlds. They still have the capacity to build fleets and wage war. If we stop now, they will rebuild. Maybe not this year or next decade, but eventually. And when they do, they'll attack again. That's their nature. So you plan to exterminate them completely? Myung-Chen asked, disgust in her voice. No, Donghyun replied. We plan to remove their ability to threaten anyone ever again. There's a difference. At that moment, a new transmission arrived at the council chambers. It was from Hive Queen Kesisthar herself, speaking directly to the assembly. The massive insectoid appeared on screen, her multiple eyes reflecting intelligence and desperation. Council members, I beg you to intervene, the Hive Queen said in the clicking language that was translated by machines. Humanity is destroying my species. We attacked your worlds, yes, but we are willing to surrender. We will accept any terms. Please stop them before nothing remains. Junho stood and addressed the Hive Queen directly. Your Majesty, you say you will accept any terms. Will you dismantle your military fleets? Yes, she replied quickly. Will you destroy your breeding facilities for warrior castes? Yes. Will you surrender your technology for faster-than-light travel, ensuring your species remains in your home system? Kesthar hesitated, her mandibles clicking in agitation. That would trap us forever in one star system. We would have no room to expand. Exactly, Junho said. You see, Your Majesty, you're not truly willing to surrender. You're willing to negotiate a temporary peace that allows you to rebuild. Humanity learned a long time ago that such peace is worthless. When we accept surrender, it must be complete and permanent. Hana stepped forward with a datapad. Your Majesty, we're prepared to offer terms. We will stop our advance immediately if you agree to the following. Total disarmament of all military vessels, destruction of all warrior breeding facilities, surrender of all FTL technology, installation of human monitoring stations throughout your space, and acceptance of a 500-year oversight period where humanity monitors your species for any signs of military buildup. That would make us prisoners in our own system, Kesithar protested. It would make you alive, Hana corrected. The alternative is that Admiral Donghyun Im continues his advance and your species faces extinction. Those are your choices. Accept complete surrender now or face elimination. You have 12 hours to decide. The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. Myung-Chen stood, her face showing both anger and understanding. This is your humanity? Forcing species to choose between survival as prisoners or extinction? This is our survival, Junho replied quietly. We give enemies one chance to surrender completely. If they refuse, we remove the threat they represent. It's harsh, it's terrible, but it works. Humanity hasn't faced an existential threat in over 100 years because everyone who might threaten us understands what we're capable of. Calseth had been analyzing data throughout the discussion. Now he spoke, his voice thoughtful. I've been studying human history, trying to understand your species. I think I finally do. You're not warriors who love battle. You're survivors who learned that the only way to ensure peace is to make war so terrible that no one dares start one. Yes, Hana confirmed. Every human child learns about the resource wars, the Mars Rebellion, the biological purge. We teach these horrors so no one forgets the cost of weakness. We maintain weapons capable of destroying worlds not because we want to use them, but because we never want to need them. The Council voted again, and this time, the result was different. By a narrow margin, they agreed to let humanity finish their campaign against the Skrull. Not because they approved, but because they understood there was no other choice. Humanity had shown the galaxy what real war looked like, and that knowledge could never be forgotten. 1 year had passed since the Skrull War ended. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted when humanity first joined the Galactic Council. The peaceful order that had existed for 600 years was gone, replaced by something new, something shaped by the reality of human military power. President Seojin Yoon stood before the reformed Galactic Council, the first human to address them as head of Earth's government. He looked out at the assembled delegates, seeing faces that showed respect, fear, and sometimes both at once. The chamber had been expanded to accommodate new security measures and military liaisons. The galaxy had learned it needed to be ready for threats, and humanity had taught them how. Members of the council, Seojin began, his voice calm but carrying authority. 1 year ago, humanity showed you something you never wanted to see. We revealed weapons you wished didn't exist and demonstrated tactics that horrified you. I stand before you today to tell you something important. We never wanted to show you that side of humanity. We hoped you would never need to see it. He paused, letting his words sink in. For 200 years we isolated ourselves because we knew what we were capable of. We knew that joining your peaceful galaxy might force us to become something we had tried to leave behind. We were right. The Skrull invasion proved that the galaxy isn't as safe as the Council believed. Threats exist, and sometimes those threats can only be stopped through overwhelming force. Archon Velthor, who still led the Council despite the changes of the past year, nodded slowly. President Yoon, humanity saved us from the Skrull. We acknowledge that. But the methods you used, the weapons you deployed, they have changed everything. Species that never thought about military expansion are now building fleets. The peace we maintained for so long is crumbling. With respect, Archon, Seojin replied, that peace was an illusion. The Skrull proved it. How many other threats exist beyond your borders? How many species like the Skrull are watching, waiting, seeing if the Council is weak enough to attack? Humanity didn't destroy your peace. We revealed that it never truly existed. Ambassador Junho Kim sat in the human delegation, watching his president address the same council he had spoken to many times over the past year. Junho had aged visibly during the war, the weight of billions of deaths etched into the lines of his face. Beside him, Ambassador Hana Park maintained her professional demeanor, but Junho knew she carried the same burden he did. General Minho Choi appeared on a secondary screen, broadcasting from the Council Military Academy that humanity had established on a neutral moon. The Academy trained officers from every Council species in strategic deterrence, defensive warfare, and threat assessment. It was humanity's attempt to share their knowledge without sharing their most dangerous weapons. The Academy has graduated its first class, Minho reported. 300 officers from 17 different species, all trained in modern military doctrine. They understand that defense isn't just about building ships. It's about convincing potential enemies that attacking you will cost more than they can afford to pay. War Marshal Draxun, who now served as the Council's chief of military operations, spoke up. General Choi's teachings have revolutionized how we think about defense. The Krell fleet is being restructured according to principles we learned from humanity. We're building fewer ships, but each one is far more capable than anything we had before. It was a remarkable transformation. The same war marshal who had mocked humanity's 12-ship contribution a year ago now eagerly implemented human military strategies. The Krell had learned respect the hard way, watching human forces accomplish in weeks what Krell fleets couldn't achieve in months. Captain Una Song was not present at the council meeting. She had resigned from military service 6 months after the war ended, unable to continue after what she had witnessed. She now lived on a quiet colony world, trying to find peace with the memories of 15 billion Skrull deaths. Her crew understood. Many of them had also left service, seeking to rebuild their humanity after tearing apart an entire species. The Skrull themselves had changed dramatically. Under the surrender terms, their warrior breeding programs had been shut down, their military fleets dismantled, and their expansion technology surrendered. Human monitoring stations orbited every Skrull world, watching for any signs of military buildup. It would continue for 500 years, ensuring the Skrull never again posed a threat to galactic peace. A new face appeared on the main screen. Representative Kastara was a Skrull worker-class female who had been chosen to speak for her species in council meetings. She looked different from the warriors the galaxy had fought, smaller and less aggressive in appearance. Her voice, translated by machines, carried a mixture of sadness and acceptance. On behalf of the Skrull people, Kastara said, "I want to thank the Council for allowing us to survive. We understand the terms of our surrender. We accept them. Our Hive Queen made terrible choices that led to the deaths of millions on both sides. We will spend generations trying to atone for what we did. How do your people view humanity now?" Kalseth asked. The Litharian observer had spent the past year studying the war's aftermath, trying to understand the long-term implications of human involvement in galactic affairs. Kestara's mandibles clicked in what the translation software interpreted as a bitter laugh. "We are terrified of them, observer. Every Skrull child is taught about the war. They learn that humanity showed us mercy by allowing us to live. But they also learn what humanity is capable of when threatened. We will never forget. We will never forgive ourselves for forcing them to show the galaxy what they truly are." President Seogen continued his address to the Council. "Humanity is sharing its defensive technology with Council members. We're providing shield generators, point defense systems, and tactical databases. What we're not sharing are our offensive weapons. Those remain under strict human control, deployed only when the Council faces threats it cannot handle through conventional means." "Why?" asked a Talsuri delegate. "If you want us to defend ourselves, why not give us the same weapons you possess?" "Because those weapons should never have been invented," Seogen replied honestly. "We created them out of desperation, out of facing extinction so many times that we had no choice. We hope that by sharing defensive technology, other species will never need to develop what we did. You'll be able to protect yourselves without becoming what we became." Dr. Hyunwoo Nam provided a technical briefing on the shared technology, human shield systems that could withstand attacks from conventional weapons, point defense networks that could intercept missiles and projectiles, sensor arrays that could detect threats from light years away. All of it was designed to prevent wars rather than win them. "What about the weapons you used against the Skrull?" Myung-Chen asked. The Viridian diplomat had become one of humanity's strongest critics, but also one of their most honest observers. "What happens to your planet-killing weapons, your molecular disassembly devices, your relativistic kill vehicles?" "They remain in service," Admiral Jiwon Kang answered from her flagship. "The Second Fleet is now permanently stationed at the edge of Council space, serving as a rapid response force. If another threat like the Skrull emerges, we're ready to respond. We hope we never have to, but we'll be ready." The conversation shifted to new members joining the Council. 3 species that had previously remained independent now sought membership, specifically citing humanity's presence as the reason they felt safe joining. The Qatari, a peaceful species from the galactic south. The Prillians, traitors who had feared being absorbed by larger powers. The Zenthar, who had simply wanted to be left alone but now recognized the value of collective security. "The galaxy is realizing something important," Kalseth observed. "Peace isn't maintained by being weak and hoping stronger species leave you alone. It's maintained by being strong enough that attacking you becomes unthinkable. Humanity has taught us this lesson at a terrible cost." Ambassador Junho Kim finally spoke, his voice tired but determined. "The cost was terrible, yes. But consider the alternative. If humanity hadn't intervened, the Skrull would have consumed dozens of worlds. billions more would have died. Sometimes the choice isn't between good and bad outcomes. Sometimes it's between bad and worse. President Seojin prepared to conclude his address. Humanity accepts the responsibility that comes with our military capability. We will serve as the Council's last line of defense, the force you call when all other options have failed. We will carry this burden so others don't have to, but we hope more than anything that you never need to call on us. We hope the galaxy learns from what happened with the Skrull and chooses peace over conflict. As the session ended, delegates began departing the chamber. Many approached the human representatives, some to express gratitude, others to voice concerns about the future. The galaxy would never return to the simple peace it had known, but perhaps it would be safer for the knowledge humanity had brought. Junho and Hana walked together through the station corridors after the meeting. They passed windows showing the vast expanse of space beyond, countless stars representing countless worlds now connected through the Council. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Hana asked quietly. "I don't know," Junho admitted. "We saved billions of lives by ending the Skrull threat, but we also showed the galaxy something that can never be unseen. Future generations will live in a different galaxy because of what we did. Better or worse?" "Different," Junho replied. "Maybe safer. Maybe more fearful. Time will tell." In orbit around the Council station, human warships maintained their silent vigil. The HDFS Indomitable, now under a new captain, led the defense fleet. Its weapons remained powered down, hidden behind innocent-looking hull plating. But everyone who saw those ships knew what they represented. They were a promise and a threat, wrapped together in one package. A promise that the Council would be protected, a threat to anyone who might attack. Months after the Council meeting, a distant probe detected something troubling, far beyond the galactic rim, where no Council species had ever explored. The probe found energy signatures that suggested massive structures. Something was out there, something old and powerful, potentially awakening from a long sleep. Junho received the report in his quarters late one night. He read through the data, his experienced eyes recognizing the implications immediately. He activated his communicator and contacted General Minho Choi. "General, we may have a situation," Junho said without preamble. "Unknown contact beyond the rim. Energy signatures suggest technology far beyond anything the Council possesses." "Beyond human technology?" Minho asked. "Unknown. But if it is, we're going to need every advantage we have." "Understood. I'll begin contingency planning." "Should we inform the Council?" Junho looked out his window at the stars, thinking about the past year, about the terrible choices humanity had made and the burdens they now carried. "Yes, they need to know. But also make sure they understand something important." "What's that?" "If this unknown contact proves hostile, if the galaxy faces a true existential threat, humanity will be ready. We've shown the Council what we're capable of. If necessary, we'll show whoever is out there that threatening this galaxy was the worst mistake they ever made." The galaxy had changed. Peace was no longer maintained through naivety and hope. It was maintained through strength, through the certain knowledge that attacking Council space meant facing humanity's full military might. It was a cold peace, a peace built on fear and respect rather than idealism. But it was peace nonetheless, and humanity would guard it no matter the cost, no matter what threats emerged from the dark between the stars. They had become the galaxy's reluctant guardians, the apex predators who ensured others could live in safety. The question that remained was simple. Would the galaxy be grateful for that protection, or would they ultimately fear their protectors more than any external threat? Only time would answer, and the answer would shape the future of every species in the Council for generations to come.